Hey, you, outdoor retailers, listen up. You're sick of it, aren't you? Another sales rep walks in and they're showing off some flimsy, forgettable apparel line that looks like it was meant for a mall. The so-called outdoor brands churning out gear that won't make it past the doors of a Costco come Saturday. You need something else. You need apparel built for granite and ice, for the steep and the cold. You need a brand that's stripped down and built up for real wilderness. You need Northwest Alpine. Back in 2010, Northwest Alpine set out to make the apparel that big brands were forgetting. The others got caught up in fashion shows, but Northwest Alpine, they went back to the essentials. They make gear that's simple, light, strong, and made to last. And where do they make it? Right here in the USA. If you're thinking, wait, you mean Northwest Alpine's Black Spider hoodie made with Polartec Power Grid is sewn up in the States? Yeah, you heard that right. And if you're tired of black, don't worry. They got colors too. So here we are in a time when everything's uncertain. Costs are going up, tariffs are looming, and old bloated brands are hiking prices. Northwest Alpine's here with American-made apparel ready to stock your shelves. Get in touch by sending an email to info@nwalpine.com to set up a line showing today. Northwest Alpine, made here for all the right reasons. Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin, and today on the show, the president and owner of Geartrade, Aaron Provine, returns to give us a Geartrade secondhand update, but also let me know why I have the brand Recommerce thing wrong. But first, please follow and rate the Rock Fight wherever you are listening. Following the Rock Fight on your favorite podcast app, giving us that 5-star rating. And hey, if it's Apple Podcasts, a written review is the single best way to help out the show. Thank you for doing that. And also, if you haven't, you need to sign up for News from the Front, which is Rock Fight's newsletter. There is stuff that we put in that newsletter that you can't get anywhere else. So head to rockfight.co, click join the mailing list, and then this Sunday, you can enjoy News from the Front. And that's it. Let's start the show. With all the secondhand chatter coming out of the Rock Fight over the past couple of months, it was really only a matter of time before I'd hear from Aaron Provine, the owner and president of Geartrade. Aaron is a returning champion, having come on the Rock Fight last summer, and when I recently threw some criticisms at Flylo's new Recommerce platform, where consumers can send in their old ski bibs to Flylo for a credit towards new product, and that's also the program that was developed in conjunction with Geartrade, well, he shot me an email telling me why I got it wrong. So I did the only thing I could do. I asked him to come back on the Rock Fight so we could talk about it. And that's today's show. Aaron is back and offers his viewpoint on what is happening in the secondhand world, how Geartrade is evolving, and why we should be optimistic about all of these brands that are creating their own Recommerce platforms. Welcome back to the Rock Fight, where today it's a return fire episode with Geartrade's Aaron Provine. All right, for the first time in over a year, the owner and president of Geartrade, Aaron Provine, is back on the Rock Fight. Welcome back, man. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me. It's good to be back. Resale's been a big topic for you, so I'm glad that I can come on here and have a voice.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here to help keep that conversation going, because it's a very important one. I will say before we start, though, the last time you were here, we were talking about how Sean Payton and Russell Wilson were going to go 13-4 together. And they're so excited about the future of the Broncos. But now the Bo Nix era has arrived. So it's got to be a little bit of a solve, like a little bit of a balm after, a couple years of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, the last 7 years of being a Broncos fan has been tough. There's optimism, which is good. The Broncos are no longer a bottom-dwelling team and is instead an average team, which is better than a bottom dweller.
They're 5-2 right now as we record this in November.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the last playoff spot right now, but we play the Chiefs this weekend, which, whatever, I can't.
Oh, well, the Kansas City, horseshoe up my ass team who won last night as we record this again. This is going to be out next week, I think, but against Tampa Bay. Like, just how many weird wins can Kansas City come up with? Jesus.
Right, Patriots 2.0.
Yeah,
whatever. So I don't know. There's promise. I like what Bo Nix is doing. I like where they're headed, but they're not a contender. Maybe they'll be a contender in 2 or 3 years, but It's the right path.
Well, also last time you were on the show, I think we stayed pretty high level with kind of the role of secondhand that it can play in the kind of the grand scheme of thing in the outdoor industry, that the outdoor industry should be making less. I guess just to kind of, level set since it's been a minute, what's going on with Geartrade? What's happening with secondhand from your lens? There's been, like you said, there's been a lot in the news. We've been talking about it a lot on this show. What's happening at Geartrade in November 2024?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of changes. We've evolved a lot. Last time that we talked, our model was multifaceted. We were a peer-to-peer marketplace. We were a consignment. We had a consignment business model. I believe we had just launched our trade-in program with DPS Skis, right? We have eliminated our peer-to-peer marketplace. So that went away in May. I don't functionally believe that peer-to-peer it can work in a niche market like outdoor. So we have evolved away from that. There's a lot of dynamics that I think are challenging with peer-to-peer and especially digitally. It's a model where I think that you have to be everything to everybody, and you can't give the focus that a market like outdoor needs, I think, to provide the experience that the customer desires.
Right.
So we moved away from our peer-to-peer model back in May. We are solely focused really on creating a great customer experience for our customers. Our consignment model continues to be a success. We continue to process a lot of inventory, sell a lot of inventory. We launched new trade-in programs with Jones Snowboards and Flylow. Both of those programs are really unique in terms of how they approach resale. We can get into that more of that later. But that continues to kind of be a big focus of ours in terms of evolving our business model. And at the end of the day, we're a family-owned and operated business. And so we don't have any VC backing, any VC funding. So everything that we do is deliberate, and everything that we introduce is really designed around the customer experience and really trying to give the customer everything that they need. It's not grow at all costs. Every partner that we work with, we're pretty tight with them. We design custom design solutions for them. And really our sole focus and purpose is to really create something that works for used gear in the outdoor industry. And that's all of our investment for the past 2 years. That's where all of it has gone to is really trying to create that experience.
So on the kind of just secondhand side in general, or the resale side in general, like it does feel kind of, we talked about a lot in the news. It's been a very hot topic around here as we react to things that are in the news. So anecdotally, anyway, it does seem like there's been more of a push towards used stuff, whereas maybe the last time you and I spoke, it felt maybe more like you're trying to kind of pull the industry towards like what you guys were doing. Are you feeling that momentum? I mean, or am I just reading too many, outdoor brand Recommerce, stories in the aggregators?
I think a little bit of both. There's definitely momentum. Market's evolving rapidly, right? Continues to grow and expand. New customers continue to enter the market. The adoption of buying and selling has increased, right? Consumers are looking at when they buy a product, whether or not they can resell that product. The resale value of that product is becoming important. Consumers are looking at their closet, their gear room, as an opportunity for them to make money, as an opportunity for them to recover cost. That is all happening. That dynamic is speeding up, and it's benefiting used gear. But there's also a massive focus, on creating profitable business models, right? And so, whereas a couple years ago, resale was really grow at all costs, there was a lot of new entrants, there were a lot of new service providers. That's slowed down a little bit, and it's kind of been a little bit of some refocus, and it's evolved really how the customer interacts with the number of players in the market. Obviously on the brand side, there's been a lot of trade-in programs launched. To your point, seemingly it's like day, every single day. Somebody launches whatchamacallit, right?
Colin something.
Yeah, some sort of a new resale program.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think that those are great. The more we talk about used gear, the more it's going to get into the consumer's lexicon, the more the consumer is going to participate in that model. The more we can get people to participate in that model, the more we're going to get this model to grow. More we're going to get sustainability to be kind of a thought that consumers really believe in.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, aside from even the stuff just reading in the outdoor news trades, but one that came out of that was the Black Diamond relationship with Wilderness Exchange in Denver, which is they do a lot of secondhand there. And then I was in Missoula, Montana a few weeks ago and got to do a tour of the Trail House, which is a great little shop in downtown Missoula. And the owner, Todd Frank, sort of walked us through their entire secondhand, how they do their consignment secondhand program. And just the level of thought that went into it to make sure it wasn't just like they're bringing in a bunch of stuff and it sits there and collects dust until it sells, like the way they're kind of going about it. And so seeing that level of commitment, even from like an independent specialty retailer, was really encouraging and like super, because you got to have this. I mean, I think Don Bushy even said it. He's like, occasionally you get that kind of weird sort of dingleberry piece of gear that just hangs out on your shelf for like 10 years as there's no home for it, or it's an odd size or whatever. But seeing then other folks who are kind of managing that, how to figure out a way to set it up so that it can be profitable and meaningful all the way down to the specialty level from like what you guys do has been really encouraging. So as a whole, it seems like there's a lot of positivity coming out of the category.
Yeah, there's a ton of positivity coming out of the category. There's a lot of momentum within the category. To your point, there's a lot of brick and mortar stores that I think are doing really, really well, right?
Yeah.
And are I would actually say brick and mortar is the pioneer here. They've been doing this for a long time. I think we do a disservice. I think the industry does a disservice to a lot of the brick and mortar stores that have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years, because of these new digital mediums that have popped up.
Right.
Resale, consignment, buybacks. This isn't a new thing. This is something that's been happening for a long time.
I started my career at Play It Again Sports.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
that was in 1995. They've been around for like 10 years at that point.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. So like resale isn't anything new. I think how we talk about resale and I think how we apply resale has evolved.
Right.
And to your point, I think, I think it came up on one of your podcasts earlier, the challenge with resale and the difference between resale and say like new is that it's really difficult to gain economies of scale. Every single item is a unique item. It's quality of one, product of one, uniqueness of one. Every single item has to be touched, has to be identified. It has to be thoroughly looked over, and then you have to go through all of the other aspects. You have to take a photo of it, right? So it's like, I can't go buy 10,000 black down jackets. Every single item is a uniqueness of one, right? And so rather than your costs on having that product come in be fractions of a penny, like there's a very real cost to it, which can be challenging, right? And that can be challenging to creating an assortment. And beyond that, you have to have enough holding capacity to be able to hold all of this stuff that's coming in, which really creates a challenge around assortment. How do you create the right assortment? And so, there are some dynamics here that are very challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, the one you mentioned earlier. So you talked about your relationship with Philo and Jones, and definitely want to talk about Jones a little bit, but focusing in on Philo. So, like we talked about, the brand Recommerce and upcycling has been. I mean, those stories are, like you said, been kind of like on a heater lately, right? So, in Geartrade, you were in the news as you partnered with Philo to manage. I guess it's the back end of their Recommerce program, if that's fair to say. So consumers can send their used Philo apparel back and receive a discount on new products. I guess just a level set, like how did that program come together? Philo, pretty small, not small, that's not a niche, let's say, ski brand, right? They've probably been around for at least 10 plus years at this point as well. So how did the program come together and how does it work?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a conversation that started, really after we launched our DPS trade-in program. And we look for brands that are core and authentic, right? And Philo certainly fits that bill. They're core, they're authentic, they make great product. Mm-hmm. They don't have an oversized line, right? It's not 10,000 items. It's well merchandised. And every single price, every single product, every single piece has a distinct point of view, right? And so they have a natural fit with what we're doing. Because we're very deliberate about working with brands and organizations that have a real good kind of thought process about how they think about their world. So the conversation really kind of came up after we launched our DPS trade-in program. For them, they wanted to find a solution that effectively could help them acquire customers, in the sense that they wanted to take trade-in program from other brands, right? So they wanted to take trade-in product from other brands. So they launched part of the Flylow leftover land is that they launched a component where they will take any brand's bib for trade-in credit, and we will process that. Geartrade will process that and resell it through Geartrade. And the customer is able to get credit to use on Flylow and be able to buy a Flylow piece. That's something that hasn't really happened in resale. Most brands, when they enter into the resale space, look at another brand's product as
oh yeah. Don't send me that. Yeah. Like, right? Don't send me your. I'm smart. Well, don't send me your darn tough socks. Like, what are you doing?
They don't want it. They don't want it, and they don't want anything to do with it, right? And so, when Dan and his team reached out to us and was like, "Hey, we'd like to do this. Are you able to do this?" I was like, 100%. Right? We have this platform where we sell a lot of stuff. As a matter of fact, I mean, we sell 2x more than a branded resale platform is going to sell, just because we have that customer. We know who that customer is. We sell to that customer. So this is a natural opportunity for Flylow to approach customers that are wearing another brand's product and be able to get them to convert into a Flylow customer.
Are you starting to see, are you getting returns? Are people sending things in? Has it been successful so far? I mean, is it matching your expectations? Not quite there yet?
It's been successful. We are getting a number of requests. We're getting a number of products. We're in the first month here. We launched it, really more month and a half in. So it's cranking for the first month and a half.
If there's one thing that unites every member of the outdoor and active community, it's that no matter what your favorite outdoor activity is, we all burn calories and we all need fuel. And that's where Fuel Goods comes in. Fuel Goods is the ultimate curator of nutrition for active people everywhere. Because no one knows more about how you should fuel your adventures or how to get that fuel in your hands than they do. And right now is prime time fueling. Over the next month, we have turkey trots, Santa runs, and frosty 5Ks, along with the temptation to refuel using all of the desserts and holiday staples that will no doubt be in your home for the remainder of the year. So guys, stop the madness. Fuel Goods has done the hard work of assembling a delicious and effective assortment of products to help you fuel your next event or adventure. And if you're overwhelmed, you can order up one of their pre-assorted boxes like the famous Rider Box or the one that started it all, the Runner Box. And when you're done shopping for yourself, order a Fuel Goods monthly subscription as the perfect holiday gift for that calorie-deprived adventurer in your life. Look, I'm hungry. Aren't you hungry? Head to fuelgoods.com and start shopping today. That's great. I mean, look, if you go back and listen to the episode, I'm probably was sounding way more cynical about it than maybe I had any right to be, but mostly because, and we'll get into it as we get to talk with these programs at large, is that this usually does feel very box checky for brands. It's like, we'll do this, send us your stuff. The fact that, like I said, it's Flylow, not a large brand, that they opened it up to everybody that's a real win. You can't, I can't imagine, I don't know, I'm sure there are others out there, but if they're openly saying, listen, we don't care who it is, just send it back and you can get something from us. It just gives people another place to send things. I'd rather probably still see them send it to just Geartrade and sort of a larger marketplace. But hey, listen, everything is helpful at this time. I would say though, like the one thing. Well, actually, let me ask you this first. I mean, were these between DPS and Flylow? Was this always in the cards for you when you bought Geartrade? Is like, we want to do more stuff like this, or is this just kind of how the secondhand marketplace is evolving? Like to do more sort of brand specific, sort of provide different services to brands specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it wasn't a part of the cards when I acquired Geartrade back in 2019. It's definitely been a part of the evolution. It's been, a part that we've just added on, really because there's kind of two factors that plays in here. Number one, like we already have all of this technology, right?
Right. Right.
We already built it all. Number two, we look at it very differently than other players in the market, right? There's, as we kind of look at the market as a whole, there are, marketplaces like us, eBay, Poshmark, etc. There are front end providers like a Trove, a Treat, Archive, and then there's backends, right? So Tursus, Super Circle, etc. Each component kind of has its own thing that it does well. But at the end of the day, like we felt that there was an opportunity for us to step into this market and really do it a little bit differently. And what I mean by that is because we already have this technology, we can apply this technology to any brand. We can get a brand up and running within a couple of weeks. Very low effort on their end. Our development team handles everything. We don't charge for getting everything set up. And so our point of view is let's get the more brands that we can get involved into the programs, the more people are going to think about resale, the more used gear is going to be sold, and the quicker the adoption rate is going to increase, right? And so we approach it from the sense that anybody can do this. And so we'll make it super easy for you to do it. In the case of like DPS and Jones, we have tuning machines in our facility. And so we refurbish those products. We put, in the DPS example, they want everything with a phantom application on there so that everything gets their phantom treatment. For Jones, they want everything kind of tuned a specific way. So we get everything set up so that the customer that's buying that used board gets basically a refurbished product.
Right.
In the Jones example specifically, they also run a program called Re-Up, which is a part of the resale program, where they will take any brand's snowboard. So if you have a Burton board, a LibTech board, right? They'll take those boards when they're dead, when they're no longer usable, send it to us, and we will help Jones recycle that product. And they take those boards and they remake them into new boards. So there's a full circularity component, and we help them. We're the main collection point for that program. We hold all of those boards until we have enough to ship it off to the manufacturer to get those boards remade into something new. So each example that we've built is really kind of an outside the box, not really copy and paste model that we've been able to create, and it's because of our unique model that we have that we're able to do that. And even going into the Flylow example, Flylow is looking at their resale model, fairly uniquely in the sense that they're not looking to profit off of it. Anything that they make that's extra, they're donating to POW.
Nice.
So all three brands that we work with are very unique in the sense that they believe in this. This is a part of their ethos, right? I mean, Jeremy Jones and Jones Snowboards, right? I mean, everybody knows kind of the sustainability story there. Dan Abrams and Flylow, he does a lot of work on trying to create a sustainable brand with Flylow, right? There's a theme and authenticity there that we really try to develop and help them build.
I think the two things in common there is still founder-led companies. We talk a lot about that. I mean, there's a really stark contrast between the stuff you typically hear me complaining about on this podcast and who's in charge of the brand I'm complaining about typically. It's like when it gets out of the hands of the founder, that's typically when the stuff that isn't as much fun to talk about starts to happen. The one thing, and I'll kind of point out, and by the way, these are, when you look at the landscape of all the different Recommerce, upcycling, whatever it is, programs, there's some unique things about both of these. the one thing, and from my more cynical lens, kind of looking at it though, is when is the sort of, I would love to see then, and it sounds like this is what Jones is doing, but how do what I get from it as a consumer sending something back, how do I get that to then reinvest in more secondhand stuff? Because a lot of brands, and to a certain extent, and I know Flylow has this on their website as well, you're going to be enticed with, you get a discount off of something new, right? So again, that kind of cynical lens, it's like, well, are you using this as more just a way to market your new product line? To even the extent of like, why do you have a separate website, for your, this program? Like Leftover Land should just be, I feel like, integrated into the Flylow main site, because that's where most consumers are going to go. So, I mean, isn't the most optimal income putting more consumers into secondhand products rather than new stuff?
Yeah, I think the simple answer. So I have a couple of answers here. I'm going to start with the real simple answer around like the integration and in terms of platforms.
Yeah.
There's a very real development cost there, and e-commerce as a whole, not every single brand is on the same platform or is built with the same stack, and a lot of them don't even have their own development teams.
Yeah.
Right. So that is very difficult. And when you're talking about the big brands versus everybody else, it is a very different world in terms of how they look at their technology stack, right? And so I think that's answer number one around why you're looking at separate experiences. Every brand that I've talked to has wanted, like in an ideal world, they've wanted to be a part of the experience. But the challenge ends up becoming kind of a resource constraint around development resources, right?
Yeah.
That's like a very real thing that I think everybody forgets, is that when you develop a website, when you create a website, there are very real technical limitations. And overcoming those is a challenge. So that's why you have separate sites. In terms of kind of your other, component, which is really kind of around this idea of new versus used, right? And I think, Owen Comerford wrote an article for the Outdoor Daily about brands and how they are not utilizing used as an asset, right?
Yeah.
And I completely agree with that point of view, right? And I agree with that point of view really because the used customer is completely different than the new customer. The used customer is typically younger. They are typically more sustainably minded. And they're looking for affordable options to get into outdoor, right? So outdoor as a whole, it's a luxury industry, right? When you're charging $700 for a jacket, like, no offense, that's a luxury item.
That is a luxury item. Yes, sir.
Like, I love that the item was created for climbing mountains and doing cool stuff. Like that appeals.
Unless you're Arc'teryx, then it was just, for looking cool in the city. Let's be honest,
Yeah. Well, isn't Warpcore dead?
Yeah, that's what GQ said.
Yeah. But the point is like it's a luxury business, right? And so the outdoor customer is typically a little bit older. And in order for the outdoor industry to introduce new customers to the industry, used is an incredible option that really isn't being utilized. And there's really two primary reasons why I believe that the industry isn't taking advantage of it. Number one is probably the biggest one, right? So the volume of new production really drives a consumption-based incentive structure, right?
Sure.
When a brand works with a manufacturing facility, oftentimes there's minimums. They have to hit minimums, right? There's also a belief in a lot of brands that they have to build products that hit specific niches, right? And so they build 5 different down jackets that all do relatively the same thing. And they have to overproduce by 30% in order to hit that.
It's important that pocket's in a different place, Aaron. Okay? You got to have the one with the weird pocket. Otherwise, what are we doing?
And I understand, like, you have to build a certain amount of products to make it viable, right?
Sure.
A certain amount of things to make it viable. And there's certainly a certain amount of production that needs to be done in order to make it cost effective. but there's way too much stuff being built. Like that's just a bottom line, right? And so ultimately what you get is you have a consumption-based incentive structure that often undercuts resale value, right? Because when
Right.
you overproduce, you're selling closeouts. When you sell closeouts are off price. Oftentimes it's a 30 to 40% off, 50% off, right? And it ultimately drives the total market value down, right?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then ultimately you get this collision when you start to get into that value structure where used is a competitor to new, right? Because consumers are going to be price shopping. And they're going to look at the value of a used product versus the value of a new product, right? Which kind of gets into my second point, which is that brands aim ultimately to control the market, right? And they utilize a lot of these resale programs to control, the market. I've had a lot of conversations where people just don't like that their brand is on eBay. And they don't like that their brand is on Amazon. They look at it as gray market product and channel pollution, right? And every brand, every retailer, they want to protect their asset, and their asset is their name, their image, their likeness, right? It's who they are. But the reality of used is that once you sell that product, you no longer own that product, right? That product is now owned by the consumer. And so by, controlling the market, effectively what you see with branded resale is tends to be kind of a way to own and manage that distribution structure, right? Ultimately, what you get is you redirect supply away from the consumers actively seeking it, and you limit the accessibility and impact, right? So those two things are very real challenges that I think they're not talked about, but I think effectively they get to your point that you kind of hammer on all the time, which is overproduce, right?
Totally. And, and it's a good point. It's a good reminder to me too. I am kind of coming out from that mindset. And then when you look at these brands that are, we talked a lot about, Marmot as a zombie brand. I mean, exactly that, where like right now, there's no value in the products that they make because you can go on Amazon and buy Marmot precipes for $60. I mean, like all of this stuff. And then just the build, cheap nature of like these large corporate, owners. And then when you kind of like flip that and put it just entirely in a box, be like, hey, we have a use portion now. Isn't it great? And then you kind of start picking it apart, what it could mean. It's like, well, actually, but we still have to react to the larger ecosystem with what we're in, right? So actually just even having a used sort of marketplace is probably a win. But then, so I definitely need to probably change my point of view, how I'm kind of going into the conversation. I think and then the other thing that I thought was interesting that I've learned probably since we started this conversation over the last couple of months was when Sophie Benson was on, and she's a environmental fashion journalist, and understanding that the larger fashion world, which I'll again remind my listeners, the outdoor industry is part of, because we all make things if we're making apparel, this is how we make apparel, no matter what the fabrics are. The outdoors is miles ahead of the rest of the fashion world. I mean, no one's having conversations with someone like Aaron or what Dan is doing at Flylow, or frankly, even like some of the maybe more or less sincere efforts being made by the larger outdoor brands as well at, American Eagle and the Gap, so that is something to really keep in mind, is that we are truly leading this in this regard. And probably what we should need to do is get our act together and like highlight like, hey, this is what we're doing in the outdoors, and the rest of you need to hop on board, so that we can truly get to a place where it is better. Things are heading in a better direction. Because everything's still just being, the real problem is that everything's just being massively overproduced, as evidenced by the insane number of Sierra stores that are going to open in 2024 and 2025.
But I mean, like, you also need to step back and like, that is the economy that we live in, right?
Yeah, totally. How do you change it? How do you, it's the disease of more, right? I mean, how do you tell people like, hey, I know we've been trained you for decades now to want more and make more money. Yeah, you got to stop doing that.
Yeah, I mean,
like, good luck.
Capitalism is it's growth, right? It's creating more growth, right? And if you're a brand, a lot of I look at the outdoor industry as, brands tend to think of themselves as, everybody's going to wear my stuff head to toe, right? I'm going to wear.
They all think it. They all think it.
Right. And that that leads to effectively thinking that it's a zero-sum game, right? It's market share, market share, market share. We
Yep.
need more market share, right? And the only way that you get there is by producing, right? And so you end up in this cycle where it's mass production. Again, that's a big reason why we partnered with the brands that we have,
Yeah.
because they think differently in that
Right.
scenario. Right. And if there is any hope of us kind of evolving that, I think that there's fundamental change that needs to be happened. So, when you kind of bang on brands for launching resale platforms, I kind of got to call you out. Like it's a little bit of some bullshit, to be honest. Like brands launching this is a good thing. The more we talk about this, the more we can get it in front of the customer, the better we're going to be, right? And it's going to take time, it's going to take effort. And as, states like California introduce, legislation and we start legislating this, it's going to move. It's going to happen. It's going to be a lot quicker, right? I mean, you look at kind of how PFAS changed, right? I mean, we're looking at the same scenario with textiles. And so nothing happens overnight. Takes a long time to turn these boats. I applaud any brand that is looking to launch this, and the more that we can get this in front of the customer, the more that they're going to start thinking used, and eventually that is going to eat away and erode at the amount of new product.
My favorite thing about this show is having people come on and tell me that I'm wrong. So I definitely have learned a few things over the last few months. I mean, from my initial, I think I've owned up to it a couple of different times, but this is great. The one thing I won't apologize for, and I'm sorry if you came up with it, I don't like the name Leftover Land. I think it's a terrible name, and you'll never change my mind on that one.
We give brands a lot of freedom in terms of how they want to approach that world, and that's Dan. That is his kind of, that's how he approaches the world.
Dan,
I think it's
you're coming on the show next. We're going to have that conversation.
I think it's a playful play on it. I think it's better than, whatchamacallit.
Well, okay. Now, credit where credit's due. At least it's not Colin something fill in the blank, which is basically what everybody else is doing. Credit there for sure.
Throw something in a chat GPT and just say rewrap this.
Well, that's why I had such a stick up my ass about this stuff, is because it does feel very not thought out. Like, hey, let's just have this and then we can say we have it. And that's just my experience with brands, is largely like that's typically what you're kind of dealing with, and a lot of times efforts that are beyond let's just make money by making more stuff. But no, you call it right. You're right. And also, like I said, the context provided by Sophie, like, no, man, this is an important thing that our industry is doing, and more of it only leads to better solutions down the road for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. I applaud Flylo for coming up with something that's not just a reapplication of the application, right? I think it's different. I think it's, it spells out something unique, and it's uniquely their voice. So I actually applaud them for thinking outside the box and approaching it in a different way.
Well, last thing I want to talk about is sort of the competitive landscape of the whole category. So you guys have been around since '99. You've been a leading voice for a long time now. So, but during this sort of recent uptick of the kind of the brand-driven secondhand news, we've heard from Out and Back. We've heard Peter from Tersis Solutions, who you mentioned earlier. He's going to come on the show in a few weeks. And a lot of people working to build businesses and solutions in the secondhand space. I mean, in talking with all of you, it does seem like you kind of have this sort of almost like frenemies type of relationship, and that your competitors who also sort of recognize what's at stake, and that general, again, like we've just been talking about, the upside of a robust secondhand marketplace is important. In this sort of competitive landscape, and as this grows, what do you feel like? I mean, you talked a little bit about what Geartrade's doing and what makes it different, but how do you look to be unique as this sort of becomes a more competitive landscape that you're operating in?
I mean, the space is already hyper competitive. Like that's the part that I think is needs to be said. It is already hyper competitive. There's a lot of people that are doing this, whether it's brick and mortar stores, whether it's digitally, whether it's branded resale. Like there's a lot of people that are already doing this. And so I look at it as already fairly competitive. I look at our business model as a little bit different. I have a really good relationship with Peter. I work with him on a number of other projects. And Tarsus, in my opinion, is one of the service providers that absolutely nails it. They have an incredible model. They are doing incredible things. We're a little bit different because we're consumer facing, whereas they are more on the back end. And when I look at, again, I kind of called it out earlier, right? It's like there are marketplaces, there are front end tooling, and then there's back end tooling, right? What we do is we're really good at connecting consumers to used gear. We sell a lot of stuff on our platform. We process a lot of stuff on our platform. As a matter of fact, last 12 months, we've processed over 100,000 items in our facility. It's not a small amount of used, especially considering that each item is unique, right? And we've created custom tooling around that to help identify those products. We have, really interesting custom built software that allows us to identify items quickly, build those SKUs quickly so that we can do it in a cost effective way. When we build out trade-in programs, we have custom site build out, we take in any brand used gear, we have pricing out, right? It's like all the things that everybody else talks about in terms of the services that they provide, we have that as well. And so for us, as we kind of continue to think about the world and think about how the world grows, our focus remains on creating a great user experience for selling used gear, and that's our focus. We don't, maybe to my own detriment, I have a lot of brands that reach out to me about closeout, and we don't really do that. It's not a game that we play compared to some of our other competitors who do have a lot of overstock used gear or overstock new gear. We really focus on getting what I like to call non-traditional inventory, right? And that is used returns. We have a couple of partners where we sell a lot of used returns, so product that has been used by somebody and has been returned. We help some major retailers solve that problem. So used gear. We help brands with that same scenario. And so for us, our focus is really on used gear. I fundamentally believe that there's too much stuff being produced.
Sure.
And for us to be able to be successful as an industry, successful as a community, we have to lean into sustainability. We have to lean into keeping stuff in use longer. It is just a major part of what we need to do. And so our focus is on enabling that, regardless of who it's with. And we don't necessarily want to enable kind of the bad behavior, which is overproducing and creating it. I think that we do need to get to a point where we as a collective industry do think about what we're producing, how much we're producing, and what the downstream impacts of that production is, and how that plays out to the overall evolution of the market. And I think that there are some hard decisions that are ultimately going to have to be made around what we are making. And so as much as I want to stand up here and be on my high horse and be like, hey, look at us, we're sustainable. Like there are a lot of things that we do that are not sustainable. And I know that. And it drives me nuts, drives me, up the wall. But this is a process. This is a progression. My previous life, I was in retail. I was at an online retailer for 14 years and buying and selling a lot of new stuff. And that was the old model.
Yeah.
I think we need to evolve that. And so that is what we are trying to do with Geartrade.
Hey, man, it's always a pleasure to have you on. I hope let's not wait, multiple NFL seasons for it to happen again. And appreciate it, man. Always appreciate your insight on this topic specifically. So thanks again for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's the show for today. What did you think? Send your feedback on this and every episode to myrockfight@gmail.com. Big thanks to my guest, Aaron Provine. The Rock Fight, it's a production of Rock Fight LLC. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening, and here to lull you to sleep with his sweet, sweet voice is Krista Makes, who's going to perform for you right now the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock fight.